Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Thursday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, this morning while I was working out, I was on the treadmill and I happened to be watching the show Intervention. And I saw a scene on there I'll tell you about in a second. And all of a sudden, this memory came back of a girlfriend that I had. Her name was Karen. And I had her for at least 3 years, four, maybe even five, from the years of about 2000 to about 2005. I got clean and sober in 2006. And here's the thing. She didn't exist, ever. It was a fake person. I'm going to tell you guys how this all came about. The reason I'm making this video is for a couple of reasons. A lot of times when I make videos like this, I kind of think of this as like an online NA or AA group. Like I tell you guys something I've been through, and like I've said in other videos, one thing I found in recovery is that addicts share a lot. Addicts share very similar stories. They go through a lot of the same things, the same lies, the same issues, the same problems, the same family issues. And when I come up with stories like this, I get a lot of comments from, dude, thanks for talking about this. It brought back memories, and, it kind of, and it helps talking about this stuff. Another reason I'm talking about it is if somebody's watching this video and you see this kind of behavior in a family member or friend or whatever, I wish somebody, back when I was using, I hated what I was doing. I wanted to die in my sleep every night. I swear to God. I got to the point when I was addicted to heroin and crack cocaine that I wanted to die in my sleep. Every night I'd be like, God, I can't do this again tomorrow. It was just like a full-time 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job where as soon as I woke up, I had to go find money, I had to lie, cheat. It was a nightmare existence. And I wished somebody would confront me. I wish somebody would just, because I couldn't stop. And I just was praying that somebody would call me on my lies. There was times when I lied to my family, and I just wished that, my mother or my sister or somebody would just say, you're freaking lying. You need help. I'm taking you to get a bed in a rehab right now. You're lying. I wish to God somebody had said that to me. I don't know how many times. Seriously. That's the purpose of making this video. Okay, this is what I saw in the show Intervention. I had forgotten all about this. You have to remember, I've been clean and sober now 18 years and 8 months. It was 18 years and exactly 18 years, 8 months on the 23rd, just a few days ago. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd of 2006. And I used for 2.5 decades. So there's so many things that I've forgotten about, even something of this magnitude, of making up a girlfriend. So I was watching the show Intervention this morning, and there was a young lady, maybe in her 20s, on there, and she was lying to her grandmother. She was asking her grandmother for money because she said she was going to go out. She had a date that night with her boyfriend, and she didn't have enough money she wanted to make sure she had enough money for supper or some bull like that. And she just went straight to the dealer. There was no date with the boyfriend. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, Karen, okay? I made up a fake persona. There was this girl back in the 90s, back when I was driving a truck, that gave me her phone number. We never hooked up because I was an addict, and all my time was spent searching for drugs, and I just didn't have time to pursue any relationship. And her name was Karen, so that's where I got the name. Although this had nothing to do with this woman, that's just where I got the name. So I made up this fake persona, Karen, and almost on a daily, if not every other day, I'd have to lie to my family. I would go through, I would need at least a half bundle of heroin every single day. That was $40 plus. I was always on E in my gas, $10 in gas. Plus I had to drink. I'd get the shakes, so I'd have to buy like a pint of Jägermeister. I needed over $100 every day just to function. Not to get high, just to function, just to get out of bed. And then any other extra money would just go to crack or whatever. So I had to make up lies every day. And this was one of my lies, and here's the thing. I've talked about my mom. Like, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to get clean is because I wanted to spend clean time with my family, my mother, my sister. We grew up together after my father died, and we're very close. And it killed me that that my mother's getting older. She's 81 now, and it just, as each year went by, I was like, sooner or later, if I keep using, she's going to be gone, or maybe even my sister. My sister has lupus, and I was like, I am not going to be able to live if I keep using and I don't have clean time to spend. That my mother and my sister don't see me clean. That will kill me. That was one of the biggest reasons. So we talk about everything. We go out. I take my mother out for breakfast at least once a week. I see her 2-3 times a week. She lives about 5 miles away from here. Her and my stepfather. We have a great relationship, and I told her everything, all the lies, all the stuff, and she's been so great. Her and my sister have been so great for giving me, and they have trust in me again. They actually give me keys to their house, keys to their cars. Of course, it's been over 18 years. I've been clean and sober, but I need to tell them everything. What's at the 8th step, making amends. And this is one of the things, now that I remembered it, I'm going to have to make amends. I'm going to have to tell my mother about this. And it's kind of hard. This is a bad one. Okay? So I made up this persona, Karen. And I would tell my mother, me and Karen are going to go to a fair tonight. Me and Karen are going to go to the movies. You think I could borrow $10, $20, $50, $60, whatever. And, Karen ran out of gas. You think I could just borrow, and it was, hundreds of times, So then, around Christmas time, my mother would be like, well, would you like to invite Karen over for Christmas? And, stuff like that. And it killed me. It got to the point inside where I felt so guilty, even though I was using every day. And I've told you guys how once I got clean, all my emotions came back, and I would cry and I'd go into rages. It was bizarre having feelings again. But even when I was using, it hurt me to lie to my mother's face like that. And I'll tell you about this, what happened. It killed me doing this. So eventually, I don't remember how Karen faded out. Probably once I got clean and sober, once I went to rehab, Karen stopped being a reason to borrow money. Like I exist on my own. I pay my own bills and everything nowadays. I don't borrow money from anybody. And Karen just faded away. And I don't think I've ever told my mother the truth about that. There was no Karen. Hundreds of times I borrowed money with the excuse of Karen. Now, here's one time I do remember. I went over to my mom's house, my parents' house, it was nighttime. It was in the late afternoon, maybe 4 or 5. And I had been using all day. I had been using crack and heroin and crack, and then I would need more heroin. I'd go up, I'd come down, and I needed more heroin. So I went back and I asked my mother for, I think it was like $60 for a bundle. And she gave it to me, and I used the excuse, Karen. Karen's going to need this, or I got it. I forgot what the lie was, but it was one of those times where I had the money in my hand after I lied to my mother's face, and I was driving away, going straight to the dealer, and I started bawling. I know this sounded, big guy, but I started bawling in the car. I started crying because it just, it had been bothering me. There was times when the emotions would come out, and I just started crying and bawling. How my mother is such a good person, and she believed me. She would do anything for her son, and here I am just stabbing her in the back and lying to her face and taking all her money out of her bank account, money she's going to need for retirement. I am just the scum of the earth. That's what I was thinking, and it was true. So I'm crying, bawling, man, money clenched in my hand, driving down to the city 15 minutes away to get my dope. Of course, I keep driving there, even though I'm crying and everything. I get there down in the city, and I go up to like the 3rd floor, and it was a female dealer, this skinny little thing, female that was selling dope. And I tried to dry my face, and she still saw it was red around my eyes. And she asked me, she says, what's wrong, And I had to lie. This is what I mean. I lied to everybody. I lied to her. Now I lied to the dealer because I felt like a wuss. I'm not going to tell the dealer that I'm crying because my mommy gave me money and I feel bad. I couldn't say that. So what I told the dealer was, I said, somebody I used with, one of my best friends just passed away. He OD'd, and it's killing me. I lost my friend. He overdosed. That's the only thing I could say why I was crying I could think of. Okay, so this is what happened. She's like, oh, this is a dealer now. She's like, oh, that's too bad, Daryl. That's too bad. She goes, one second. So I buy a bundle, 10 bags. And she comes back, and she gives me 3 extra bags of dope. Which, I should, because she felt bad. She thought I was telling the truth about somebody ODing. This is just the mess, I hear myself saying this, and this is the messed up world of addiction and drugs. I was all upset because supposedly somebody OD'd, and this dealer gives me more drugs to soothe me so that I could possibly OD. It's when I hear myself saying all this stuff now, it's just, it's so irrational. And I left that dealer. And now I feel even worse. I just feel, I should be happy because I scored 3 extra bags. But I just feel like a shit. I just feel like total shit. There was still a heart in me somewhere. Like I said, the drugs really tamped down my emotions, but there was still a heart in there somewhere. And I just, of course I used everything. And I forgot about it, after I used the bags and everything, and, I faded to the background, but I just felt terrible. I had lied to my mother for money, I had lied to the dealer, and I got more drugs, and, and the more the lies succeeded, the worse I felt. I just felt like such a big piece of shit liar, which I was. Yeah. So that's what happened. And, like I said, in recovery, I see now, I thought I was unique. I thought I had a higher tolerance than everybody else. I thought I could stop using. Unlike everybody else, I could stop. I could use more than everybody else. I'm not going to OD because I'm different than everybody else. And once you're in recovery, you realize that is all bullshit. Like I said, I've been in hundreds of AA and NA meetings, and people talk going around the room. And it's just person after person. This is why these meetings are so great, because I could identify with each person talking. It's like, oh my God, I did the same thing. I said the same stuff. I went through the same thing as this guy and that girl and that guy, and there's people, there's kids that are 17 years old. There's men that are in their 70s. There's black guys, white guys, professionals, doctors, nurses, and that's when you're in these groups. And you realize, that you really are under the disease of addiction. And you all suffer from this same disease. After you see how much in common, how these people are all going through the same exact bullshit that you're going through, you feel less alone, And I'm starting to get goosebumps. And these people help you. You help them and they help you. Like once I was new there, the newcomers are important. I was in these, I've been going to these groups for years. And the newcomers are important because they show the older people how they used to be. And we need to be reminded of that constantly. That was me, this guy that's only got 5 days clean and doesn't think he can make it, and it's good for me to see that. And then once I'm a one-timer, it's good because it shows people that recovery is possible. Here's a guy that's got 18 years, and not only 18 years, but 18 fantastic, unbelievable years. I thought my life was over. Here's the thing. I could not imagine having sex without drinking or using. I was like, I won't be able to do it. I I'd never been romantic. I'd never been intimate one time, since I first got laid when I was 14 years old. Every time I was high or drunk. And I was like, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how married couples do this. They do it during the daytime without drinking or using. How does that happen? How does that work? And this is what I found out. It is so much better. I won't get too into this, but oh my God. I found out it's so much better. I actually found out that I'm very vocal. I actually make a lot of noise, man. Okay, that's too much information. Anyway, sobriety is better than I could ever imagine. These are the best days of my life. Recovery is possible. I feel like my life has just started. Like I've been given a second chance. I felt like you're playing a video game, and you used up your third man, and you die. The game's over. But I got a free man now, and I got an extra game. That's how I feel. In recovery, I've been given a second chance, and it's fan-fucking-tastic. Recovery is possible. Have a good Thursday.